It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. A Belgian judge released the 5 senior Catalonian officials that exiled themselves in Brussels on October 30th. The judge instructed them not to leave the country without permission and to inform the police of their accommodation. The 5 are deposed President of Catalonia, Carles Puigdemont, as well as Marie-Taxel Serret, Antoni Comín, Louis Puig, and Carla Ponsati. The 5 fled to Belgium when Spain imposed direct rule over Catalonia, rejecting the results of the October 1st referendum, in which a majority voted for independence from Spain. The Spanish government issued a European-wide arrest warrant for Puigdemont and the other leadership. They turned themselves in. And Puigdemont continues to declare that he will not return to Spain until he is guaranteed a fair trial. On to talk about this with me is Sebastian Faber, professor of Hispanic Studies at Oberlin College. He's the author of the forthcoming book, Memory Battles of the Spanish Civil War. Sebastian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be with you again.
So, Sebastian, you were just in Spain just a few days ago, and I'm sure you were in the throes of a lot of what's going on there. But let's start with why Belgium offered sanctuary to the fleeing Catalonian politicians, and why did they choose Belgium as a place to escape to?
They chose Belgium, I think, for 2 reasons. One, because it's basically the seat of the capital of the European Union. The capital of Belgium, Brussels, is also where the European Parliament is and most European institutions. And secondly, I think because Belgium is known to have a legal system that is very protective of the rights of the accused. And maybe a third reason is that Belgium is also a multilingual state. And for somebody who feels that their language and culture are not being respected in the Spanish state, they might be expecting some measure of sympathy from, for example, the Flemish, among whom themselves there is an independence movement. So, for example, when Puigdemont was given the choice, as people are in Belgium, to choose between a French-speaking or a Dutch-speaking judge, a Flemish-speaking judge. He picked the Flemish-speaking judge, even though he himself doesn't speak Dutch, but he does speak French. Likely in part because a Flemish-speaking judge may be more sympathetic to the plight of the Catalans as they are trying to fight for their rights and their independence in Spain.
Sebastian, what is the role of the European Union in this crisis? No European state has recognized Catalonian independence as yet. Now the EU is collaborating with Spain in terms of executing on the arrest warrant. Also, the EU's role is to represent the interests of the nation state, who are member states. Considering all this, will the European Union respond adequately to the Catalonian independence struggle?
I don't think so. In the big picture, I don't think the EU will act differently. They will continue to respect the sovereignty of the Spanish state and the right of the Spanish state to take control over Catalonia. And they will continue to see Catalonia's attempt to achieve independence as unconstitutional and as unacceptable. At the same time, though, there's increasing pressure on the EU leadership and the EU Parliament to check the way that Spain is dealing with the situation, particularly the way in which it's taking advantage of the crisis over Catalonia to curb constitutional and civil rights in Spain. A letter went out a couple of days ago, signed by 188 public intellectuals all over the West, including some members of the European Parliament, calling attention to the basically dangerously the slippery slope on which the Spanish government has entered in terms of civil rights and constitutional rights. They basically stated in the letter that the Spanish government is invoking one article of its constitution, Article 155, which allows it to impose direct rule, to trample many other constitutional rights, including the right to assembly, the right to free speech, and things like that. So there's pressure on the European Parliament, increasing pressure on the Spanish government related to the way they're dealing with this crisis.
Now, as far as I know, Puigdemont continues to appeal to an international audience for public support. He just penned an article in The Guardian, which is asking people to support the movement, but also that he says he will not return to Spain until he gets a fair trial. What is he actually accused of, and do you think he will receive a fair trial if he's extradited to Spain from Brussels or from Belgium?
So there's a number of issues with the way in which the Spanish government has dealt with the situation. The most overarching issue is that it has turned what is a political problem into a judicial problem. So it has made the courts do the work, the dirty work, that the government should have been doing, which is to sit down with the Catalan government and to find a solution that is acceptable to both parties and that will guarantee a sustainable role for Catalonia over the long term within the Spanish state. By turning it into a judicial problem, the Spanish government has also basically shown to the extent to which the separation of powers in Spain is not quite that. There are issues with the court itself that has been that the Attorney General in Spain has appealed to deal with the case, which is the National Criminal Court. And there are issues with the charges brought against the Catalan government. Those charges are three. There are rebellion, sedition, and embezzlement or misuse of public funds. What Puigdemont is saying is that he doesn't believe that this particular Spanish court, the National Criminal Court, and its relationship to the Attorney General, that is, to the government, is kosher. He is claiming that if tried by this court, given the judges of the court, given their relationship to the national government, he will not receive a fair trial. And so it's actually up to the Belgian judiciary at this point, to the Belgian judge, to weigh and to evaluate the charges brought against Puigdemont and the four other ministers, to see whether an extradition or at least a delivery back to Spain is warranted or not. So what Puigdemont is saying is, Puigdemont is trying to do two things. He's trying to sow a seed of doubt among international opinion about the workings of the Spanish judicial branch, and he is trying to insert another judicial filter into the process. So by having the Belgian courts also evaluate the charges brought against him, he might be able to have some of those charges thrown out. For one, the charge of rebellion and sedition are not listed as charges that would warrant extradition. So it may well be that through this process, the only charge that's held up in this process between Belgium and Spain is a charge of misuse of public funds, which is a way less severe charge than rebellion or sedition would be. The reason that rebellion and sedition are doubtful is because what Catalonia tried to do was to become independent of the Spanish government. Rebellion and sedition really have to do with trying to overthrow or undermine the central government, and through violent means, no less. And it's really the question whether an attempt to become independent through a referendum can be defined as at the same level as a violent overthrow of a national government as, for example, in a military coup.
Sebastian, while the Catalonian leadership is undergoing all of this in Brussels, and there are many people also who have gone to Brussels to help and be supportive of the leadership there, what is happening to the Catalonian leadership and, of course, the upcoming elections in which there are a number of parties involved in making that happen? And give us a little more detail of that.
In some ways, the whole show between Puigdemont and his ministers and Madrid is really a distraction from what's really, I think, really important at a deeper level, which is the rise and fall and the different alignments of political parties, both in Catalonia and in Spain as a whole. Catalonia is facing elections in a very short term. The parties this week have had to announce whether they will join in coalitions or not. There was a question whether the coalition that won the elections in 2015, which was built around the notion of independence, whether it's going to be repeated. Looks like it's not going to be repeated. But what Puigdemont's adventures in Belgium have managed to do is yet again to displace the focus of political discussion from corruption, social policies, economic inequalities, economic policies, poverty, marginalization, all those issues that were so important in the wake of the 2008-2009 crisis. Those have all been displaced, and everything is now yet again about independence or not. Are you with Madrid or are you with Catalonia? And what's that done is that it has forced frames onto political parties that are more beneficial to some than to others. They're beneficial to Puigdemont's party, for one, which is a center-right, regular center-right European party, neoliberal in outlook, pro-business, and fairly conservative in social policy. It's also beneficial to the left Republicans in Catalonia, who have always been strongly in favor of independence, and whose leader is now in jail in Madrid. It has really been bad in political terms for the non-pro-independence left, particularly Ada Colau's party. Ada Colau is the mayor of Barcelona, and the Catalan branch of Podemos, the new anti-austerity party in Spain. Those parties are now seeing drops in the polls. They have split over the issue. The Secretary General of the Podemos Catalunya resigned from his post. Actually, was forced to resign, and went ahead and founded his own new party. So there's a real division among the left, and public disagreements about the issue of independence for Catalonia. Moving to the rest of Spain, what we see happening is that at a time when the corruption of political parties and political leaders was, for a long time, one of the main concerns of the public, that is now dropping, and the issue of Catalonia is moving up as a concern. This is extremely beneficial to the party most affected by the corruption, which is the ruling party, Rajoy's party, the Partido Popular. Just today, the leader of an investigation into one of the many corruption rings involving the governing party testified to a congressional committee, to a parliamentary commission in Madrid, and he confirmed that the current Prime Minister of Spain, Rajoy, received black money, received extra pay from what has now been confirmed was a long-standing set of shadow books maintained by the ruling party that served to receive kickbacks in return for major public contracts, for major public infrastructural projects. This is a major piece of news that, yet again, is being snowed under by all the to-do around Catalonia, Puigdemont, the trial, the people in prison, etc. So there's a way in which the stand-up of Catalonia, real as it is, and important as it is, and real as its effects are on the population, serves as a distraction that in the end will only help to divide the left and to strengthen what people call the regime of 1978, the two-party system that was set up in the 70s and 80s and is now fighting to survive, and it's struggling. It's succeeding in that survival right now, and the Catalonia issue is helping it.
Right. Now, in terms of Rajoy and Madrid determined to control the outcomes of the upcoming election in Catalonia, what can we expect in the coming month in terms of the preparations and people's desire to vote and the turnout, as well as if there's going to be any impingement on their rights coming up?
I think regardless of what happens, the turnout will be very large. Even though normally elections are held on Sundays, this election is going to be held on a Thursday, I believe. Turnout is expected to be very large. Mobilization on both sides is going to be expected to be really strong. But like I said, because it's all framed around pro-independence or against independence, the parties in the middle, which are mostly the left parties, will suffer. In terms of the attempts of the central government to influence the elections, I think those will come down in two ways. One will be strictly legal. There's a real attempt on the part of Madrid to not only judicialize the issue, but to actually criminalize political ideas. There's different spokespeople from the central government that have suggested that parties that favor independence should be illegal. We've already seen that the political leadership that pushed for independence is now in jail and is being persecuted in the courts. So there's a real attempt to criminalize politics, and as a way to reduce the power of the opposition or to eliminate the opposition. And that's what the letter to the European Union, among other things, addressed. The second way in which the Partido Popular is going to try to influence the elections is to already anticipate what it will do if a particular outcome occurs. So now several spokespersons of the central government have said that should the pro-independence parties yet again win a majority in the Catalan parliament, like they did in 2015, then they wouldn't hesitate a moment and reapply Article 155, that is, reimpose yet again central rule. So there's a way in which the Madrid government is trying to influence the elections by anticipating an outcome and then indicating that the outcome will be useless anyway because they'll start all over again.
One final point, Sebastian. I understand that the mayors in Catalan has been deposed. What does that mean, and does this mean that they cannot contest in the next elections?
The next elections will be for the regional parliament. They won't be for municipal governments. So that, in that sense, that doesn't matter. At the same time, this is one of those tactics, you can call them scare tactics, by judicializing and criminalizing politics, the central government is trying to cow political leaders, among them mayors, while at the same time creating what is basically a judicial nightmare, because although I think 700 mayors are being deposed, that's 700 depositions that are clogging up the Catalan judiciary. All those people have to go to a court and declare, and so there's it's completely unmanageable in practical terms, but in political terms, it's yet again an attempt on the central government to force Catalan public opinion, to force Catalan democracy into the mold that they would like to see. In the end, this will not work. In the end, they will only create more resistance, showing yet again that to whatever extent what they propose as solutions are solutions, they can only be really short-term solutions that will only make the problem worse in the end.
All right, Sebastian, I thank you so much for joining us, and I hope to have you back fairly soon, I think, particularly in the run-up to the upcoming election, and also to elaborate more on the corruption scandal unfolding beneath all of this. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
And thank you for joining us here on the Real News Network.